Yeah. Are you here?
You?
Lena is smiling, which is a very good sign. Someone from Kharkiv is still smiling.
Yes. Can
Wow.
you hear me? Yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hello, dear colleagues, dear friends, TESOL Hawaii and TESOL Ukraine members. It is my great pleasure to see all of you online and to continue our series of webinars of TESOL Hawaii in solidarity with TESOL Ukraine. And today we will have our third webinar, and we will have really a special speaker, a special presenter. And this person is Ms. Sally Luzerne-Oi. I believe many people in Ukraine know her very well. And they know the work Sally has been doing for the collaboration of our associations. In the year of 1994, she first visited Ukraine for the first time, and it was in my native city, Kharkiv. Sally was with a group of teacher trainers, and I had the privilege to be in her group. And I remember that at the end of our trainings, Sally gave us her book as a gift. It was the book, Tell Me About It. And many people in Ukraine, many English language teachers have been using this book for many years, and we like it very much. Thank you. And since in the year 2002, we signed our partners agreement with TESOL Hawaii, and since that time, Sally has been doing her job as a contact person, a liaison person between our associations, TESOL Hawaii and TESOL Ukraine. And thanks to this person, our cooperation has been always so intensive, interesting, successful, and we would like to thank you for all this. And I would like to add that Sally was the first person who contacted us after the beginning of the military conflict in Ukraine. And then as a result of our talks and messages, we decided to organize this, to have this series of webinars of TESOL Hawaii in solidarity with TESOL Ukraine. And our Vice President, Marina Tsigielska, as many of you know, spent a year in Hawaii as a Fulbright scholar. So she knows Sally very well. She has been in close cooperation with her. So I think Marina will continue my short introduction.
Thank you. And I want to tell how much Sally means for me personally and for us as the organization. It's with her help I think like she inspired me personally to be so active in teachers' organizations because all the experience that I got with Hawaii TESOL was later implemented here. And seeing the people who are so devoted, who give lots of everything without asking for anything, people who are so friendly and who share, care, and support, like it really changed my life. And Sally, I am trying to bring your spirit here to TESOL Ukraine, and you should always remember that you played a great role in the development of our organization because you inspired both me and Lena, and we are trying to inspire our colleagues. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for those beautiful words. And I know you've been doing a lot of great things, and I've been very happy to work with you over the years. So thank you. And thank you all for coming to this webinar on using humor to enhance language lessons. And I believe the webinar is being recorded.
Yes, yes, yes.
But still, I would ask you to copy down my email address. And if there's anything here that you would like me to send you, I can send it in document form. You're going to see lots of things. So just, send me an email and write down what it is you'd like, and I'll get that to you soon. Okay. I'm going to start today with a rationale for using humor in our teaching. I'll go over 5 ways of how, or 5 types of humor, I should say, and give you some examples of how to implement them. And then I'll show you some resources, and we'll have time, I hope, for some questions or discussion. And also there are some places along the way where it would be great if you want to shout out, or maybe you don't need to shout, but participate, to give answers, give thoughts. And so please don't hesitate to turn on your mic and respond. Okay. A lot of research has been done on using humor in language teaching. And I have an extensive bibliography, but not on the slides. If you'd like that bibliography, again, email me and I'll send it to you. But why use humor in language teaching? Again, the research shows there are a number of reasons, and we can divide those reasons into 2 categories. I'll start with the effective reasons. Excuse me. Laughter is a natural stress reliever. So using humor in the classroom can decrease student anxiety and stress. Humor can build a positive classroom atmosphere. If students are laughing, it brings them together in a shared experience with a shared universal language, which is laughter. So we can create better dynamics in the classroom. Sometimes students wonder about us, but we can show that we're human by using some humor in our classes, and it helps build bridges between students and teachers. And if you're teaching, as I did in the past, classrooms with different cultures, it can help build bridges among the different cultures in class as well. Humor, as I'm sure you all know, provides a change of pace. It helps prevent boredom. We all know that there are low energy days. And if we want to perhaps add a little spice, we can use some humor. Dr. Pierre-Émile Chiasson, a French professor, he's French, and he taught English in France and in Canada, and did a lot of research on using humor. And he conducted some student surveys and asking students what they consider to be the effective or the essential elements of an effective teacher. And in all these surveys, students always mentioned teachers' ability to use humor to maintain student interest. Just as an aside, the other things students listed were content knowledge, making connections, a teacher's love and commitment to students, and a teacher's dedication to teaching. Okay. The second category of reasons for why we should include some humor are pedagogical reasons. Laughter is a communicative human reaction. Scientists say that laughing is our first way of communicating. Babies laugh before they speak. And the use of humor is a social skill. Again, Dr. Chiasson writes that humor is a communicative human reaction and social skill, just like greeting and conversing with friends. And since it plays a major role in our everyday interactions, we shouldn't ignore it in the classroom or leave it out of our teaching. Humor encourages creativity, and I hope you'll see some examples of that as we go through the rest of the slides. Studies show that the use of humor helps students with recall. Neuroscientists have found that humor, and I quote, activates the brain's dopamine reward system. And dopamine is important for long-term memory. And finally, we've all heard a lot, read a lot about using authentic materials, and you can find lots of authentic humorous materials online, in print. And so not only do they offer language practice, but they give cultural insights, and they're free. Okay. Next, I'd like to go on and give you some examples, or did I cover? Yes, I did. Give you some types of humor with some examples. So the first one, I'm going to show 5. The first one is the use of funny pictures and signs. We know that visuals are important to helping students understand certain concepts, and a book with visuals or handouts with visuals are better than no visuals. But there are so many funny pictures and signs online and just around us that, you know, if we can bring in that element of humor, again, it helps students recall. So we have a sign here with a bit of irony that was taken at a zoo. So I like that one. Later on, you'll see some sites where you can find these pictures, but we can use these funny pictures and signs to practice vocabulary. What's this? A monkey. It's a surprised monkey. I borrowed the next 2 pictures from a colleague who had taught beginning level Japanese and had a file for every chapter in his book of humorous pictures to supplement. So when he went over everyday activities and the present continuous, these were a couple of pictures he showed. So we can use pictures to practice questions and answers. What are they doing? Anyone? What are they doing? They're taking a shower. Okay. What is he doing?
Marching.
Marching. Okay, he's marching.
Going shopping.
Going shopping. Okay, great. This colleague said his students often said, oh, walking on the street. And he would say, well, but look what he's wearing. He's going shopping with his fanny pack.
Just enjoying his life.
Exactly. Okay, so we can use funny pictures to practice vocabulary, to practice questions and answers, to practice certain grammatical forms. We can use funny pictures for discussion, storytelling, or dialogue practice. So for example, if I were going to use this picture, I might ask students, what emotion do you see on her face? What is happening in this picture? And
Some offer.
yes.
Proposal.
We could ask students to write a dialogue between this woman and the person with the ring. We could ask students to write what happened before this scene or this picture. So we can give a lot of practice in discussion, storytelling, or dialogue practice, written practice, or oral practice. Recently, I visited Texas, and I was kind of surprised because I hadn't seen this. When I was walking down the street, there were a lot of little shops, and many of the shops had signs like this out front, and they all attempted to be humorous. So this sign, Husband Daycare Center, of course, daycare is usually for children, right? Need time to yourself, to relax, to shopping. You might want to ask your students if they see a grammar problem here. But leave your husband with us. We will look after him for you. You only pay for drinks. Okay, so what could we do with this? Well, maybe I'm doing a lesson or on advertising, for example. This is a great example of marketing, of creative marketing. So if I'm doing a lesson on marketing or advertising, I might ask students, what kind of business is this and how do you know? What kind of business is this? Anyone? Can you tell?
It's a bar or a cafe?
It's a bar. Very good. And why did you guess that? Excuse me.
Because drinks.
Yes.
Why do men go to bars?
Okay, drinks. And we have Stella Artois up here, a Belgian beer, right? So we might talk about, do you think this is an effective form of advertising? Do you think it's funny? Why or why not? And we might ask our students to think of another business, make a sign that they could put out front. Make it on a piece of paper or on the computer if your classes are online. Make a poster. There are some good sites for making online posters. And then have your classmates try to guess what kind of business is it and do they think it's effective as a marketing tool. Okay. So that's one I just happened on about a month ago, took a picture of. We can take pictures and they don't necessarily have to be funny, but we can take pictures, put them around the classroom on the wall, or just put them in a document randomly if we're teaching online, and ask students to write captions. So here we have a picture of a dog looking a little guilty, but, and so the caption is, I don't know what happened. This toy just exploded. So again, we can take pictures. They don't have to be funny in themselves, but we can ask students to write captions that have a bit of humor in them. And that gives them good practice with very short piece of information, but trying to create some humor within. Again, asking students to be creative. Okay, let's move on to another type of humor. And these are using humorous sentences anecdotes, and texts. I should probably back up a bit and say, I highly recommend that if you want to use humor, you have files that go with your lessons. And when you see something, just throw it in your file. Many of the things I'm showing you today were in a manila folder that I've been collecting humor pieces in for years and pull them out when I see they can supplement a lesson nicely. So humorous sentences, anecdotes, and text we can use to practice pronunciation. Excuse me, punctuation. But we can practice something else with this. These sentences are very common. You'll find them on many places in the internet, but the purpose of them is to show the importance of a comma. So we can have, let's eat, Grandma, or let's eat, Grandma. And what's the difference? If we want to ask our students if they can tell the difference. What's the difference of these? Let's eat, Grandma. Let's eat, Grandma. Anybody want to explain? What is the first one?
Natalia gave a comment, comma saves lives, meaning grandma's life.
Okay, yes, exactly, that's great. And I want to thank my parents, Tiffany and God. I want to thank my parents, Tiffany and God. I'm sorry, I'm not attending to the comments right now. So Marina, thank you. If you
Yeah, I will tell, yeah.
Okay. So again, what about that first one? I want to thank my parents, Tiffany and God. I want to thank my parents, Tiffany and God. Okay, of course,
Natalia says, nice parents couple, like
Yes.
Tiffany and God, two parents.
Their first names are Tiffany and God, very unusual. Okay. Okay, so these can be fun to show students the importance of commas, and I put to practice punctuation, but actually as we say them, we're practicing the supersegmentals, right? Pause and stress. So that's another way we can use these sentences to have our students practice supersegmentals. The next one is similar and a little more involved, but it shows students how if you change the place, not sometimes, not always, but changing the place of full stops, periods, question marks, can really change the meaning of something. This letter is all over the internet, and if I were going to use it, I think I would just put it up and we would read it together and talk about it a little, but then we would do a lesson on punctuation. So here we have the first version of this Dear John letter. Dear John, I want to know a man, I want a man who knows what love is all about. You are generous, kind, thoughtful. People who are not like you admit to being useless and inferior. You have ruined me for other men. I yearn for you. I have no feelings whatsoever when we're apart. I can be forever happy. Will you let me be yours? Gloria. Now, would someone like to read the second one? Any volunteers or victims?
They will, please.
Do I have a volunteer to read the second one? That's what I tell my students, volunteer or victim.
So
in other words,
I'll read. Well,
oh, thank you.
Dear
Thank
John,
you, Lily.
I want a man who knows what love is. All about you are generous, kind, thoughtful people who are not like you. Admit to being useless and inferior. You have ruined me. For other men I yearn. For you, I have no feelings whatsoever. When we are apart, I can be forever happy. Will you let me be? Yours, Gloria.
Okay.
It's
Thank you.
amazing. Yeah. It's
Thank you. It's amazing. It's a little, the letter's a little stilted, the language, yet we can see, and thank you, Lily. We can see, we can hear. We've got the exact opposites simply because changing the full stops, the commas, the question marks. So again, I think this is just a good wow for students to see, yeah, punctuation can be very important. Okay, so that's a text which I find a bit humorous. Okay, oh, what happened? Let's see. Okay, you all know tongue twisters. She sells seashells by the seaside.
Yeah.
Well, there are lots of them online. There are lists of them to practice problematic sounds. But I think if we let our students try to make tongue twisters, work with a partner or in a small group and have them focus on a sound that's giving them difficulty, ask them, give them a formula to write their own tongue twisters. For example, subject, ask them to write subject, verb, object. So they're getting some grammar practice here too. Peter peeled a pear, and then you can ask them to add another subject, verb, and object with and, make a compound sentence. Peter peeled a pear and Paula picked a peach. We might stop there depending on our students' level, or we could ask them to make a complex sentence so we can tell them simple, compound, complex sentences. They could add the word while, when. Peter peeled a pear and Paula picked a peach while Pam poked a piñata. And then they can practice saying it and then they can lead the class in saying their tongue twister, which their tongues will probably get twisted and people start laughing. So there's a way of making humorous sentences generated by our students to practice sounds that they find complicated. Okay, on the internet, there are numerous poems about the idiosyncrasies of pronunciation, the English language. And so this is one of them, but there are many others. You know, sometimes our students get very discouraged because tough, bow, cough, dough, hiccup, thorough, lack, through. But perhaps we can make it a bit humorous or make them smile a bit with these pronunciation poems. And again, there are numerous ones online. Okay. Collecting texts. Well, you want to collect texts that have a twist in them so that you can use them for listening or reading practice, having students make predictions. So if I were doing a lesson on social media, I have a text I found, and I actually found it on Facebook. It popped up one day and I thought, oh, this is kind of neat. I could use this in a social media lesson. So before the students hear the text, I would have them discuss these questions about Facebook, because it's important to have a knowledge of Facebook and what's posted there, and talking about following somebody. That's all important to getting the gist of the anecdote. Then I would read the anecdote, and I'll read it for you. And I'm going to stop before the last line so that we can make a prediction, or you can make a prediction, because I already know what the last line is. Okay, so listen carefully. I'm going to tell you a story about a person who uses Facebook but wants to take some things she learned on Facebook and use them in a different way. And this person says, I am trying to make friends outside of Facebook while applying the same principles. Therefore, every day I walk down the street and tell passersby what I have eaten, how I feel at the moment, what I have done the night before, and what I will do later and with whom. I give them pictures of my family, my dog, of me gardening, taking things apart in the garage, watering the lawn, standing in front of landmarks, driving around town, having lunch, and doing what anybody and everybody does every day. I also listen to their conversations as I pass by or as they pass me by and give them a thumbs up to tell them I like them. And it works just like Facebook. I already have. Okay, now, of course, I would probably read it again, but we want, okay, I already have. How does this story end? This person who tells us she's trying to apply the same principles of
Friends.
making friends.
Mhm.
Okay.
She has
so
many friends.
Okay, possibly. Anybody else? She already has many friends. Anybody else?
Maybe no friends, but people think that I'm crazy.
Okay. Very good.
I agree with the previous remark. I think so many of them just decided not to listen to you, to make a distance.
Okay, very good. Well, here's how the story ended. And it works just like Facebook. I already have 4 people following me. 2 police officers, a private investigator, and a psychiatrist. Okay. So you were very close when you said they think you're crazy. Okay. So we have given our students listening practice. It could be reading practice too. And we have gotten a laugh. And again, if you want this, I have it in document form. I can send it to you with the pre-listening questions. Okay. So, okay, we're still on my second point or my second type, which was funny sentences, anecdotes, and texts. I have a lot of them, so I guess you can tell what I like using the best. Okay, we can use a funny passage to practice a grammar point. I went to a conference and the presenter was talking about using humor. She gave a full page, an 8 by 11 page activity. It's a story called The Gorilla Man. And the story is for students to practice using the articles. So you can see the very first sentences here. Okay. Well, I didn't want to put this whole story on slides. You can just, did everybody read those first sentences? Yeah, okay. So I'll just tell you, I'm not going to read the whole story, but I'll tell you we want our students to fill in the blanks and then go back and we'll have them read this out loud or take turns because that's where the humor is. And let me just summarize the story because this man who was looking for a job goes to the zoo and the owner of the zoo says, well, the job isn't exactly for a zookeeper. Our gorilla died and it's going to take a long time to get another gorilla. So we have a gorilla suit and we'd like you to dress up like a gorilla. And the man is like, well, okay, I need a job. So the man puts on the gorilla suit, goes to work every day and really starts enjoying eating bananas, jumping around, waving at the people who are standing looking at him. One day he starts swinging from a tree and goes, well, this is fun too. But the branch breaks and he lands in the tiger's cage. And he's very, very nervous, very afraid. But he thinks I can't yell because then the people will know I'm not a gorilla. but the tiger starts approaching him and he gets so scared that he starts, help, help. And the tiger says to him, if you don't shut up, we're both going to lose our jobs. So I thought that was a cute story, and it gives students a lot of practice with articles. So again, if you would like that one for a grammar class, send an email to me and say you'd like the Gorilla Man, and I'll send you the complete story. Okay. And also to practice grammar, you can find a lot of poems. There are poems about English pronunciation. There are also a lot of poems about grammar, or in this case, the formation of plurals. English is hard. We'll begin with the box, and the plural is boxes, but the plural of ox becomes oxen, not oxes. So we can just, again, if we're working on plural forms, we could maybe, depending our students' level, either begin the lesson with this or end the lesson to kind of wrap it up with a smile. So lots of possibilities here. Okay, the third type of humor you might want to use is cartoons and comics.
I've seen it recently.
Yes. Actually, there's a newscaster on our public television, and she has a cat. All during COVID, they've been Zooming the news reports, and she has a cat that keeps walking into the picture, into the screen. But her cat has become pretty famous. Viewers like that cat. Okay, so this is, we can use a cartoon to introduce a theme or concept. So I like putting these up just at the beginning of a class, let students look at them and try to find the humor. So I remember teaching a lesson on complaining. That was the function in the chapter we were doing, how to complain, how to negotiate for what you want. So functional language lesson. But if I were doing that lesson soon, I might put up this comic. We see the complaint department, I assume in a department store.
Yeah.
And I assume this man is an employee, because he goes up to the complaint department and says, the alarm didn't go off, my car wouldn't start, missed the bus, my back's aching, and I haven't had a raise in 2 years. Okay, so we could use that comic just to set the tone. Okay, today we're going to talk about complaining and negotiating for what you want. And then if you can find cartoons, there are some online with blank dialogue bubbles. These two, I'm sorry, they're kind of messy because I found them and then whited out the dialogue. These are two different cartoons, but the first one is a father and son. The father walks in, hears the son's music. I can't believe. And then our students are going to have to finish that dialogue bubble and then continue with the dialogue. Now you kids. And the kid says, catch up, Dad, it's the language of the streets. And then we have a little more dialogue. So that's one comic strip with showing complaining. And then the one below is a kind of typical husband, wife, are you, da, 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 and you always, da, 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 da. And he says she used to complain that I, da, 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 da. So again, we can give our students practice writing a story, putting it in the dialogue bubbles, and then have them practice with their partners saying the two parts. So writing and speaking practice at one time. Okay, when we think of cartoons, we think of ha-ha, funny, but we can use cartoons too for a little more serious discussion. And This comes, and I have this at the end. This comes from a site called Kaggle. You see it on the bottom, kaggle.com, and you see that it has talking points. So this is a good one for teachers because you do have a visual and you have discussion questions. And again, that visual might help our students recall, and we might ask our students if they think that's does that comic really depict, or not comic, cartoon, what's happening? And finally, we can ask our students to make their own comic strips to depict ideas and stories that maybe go with our lesson. There are several sites. Again, I have those in my resources listed at the end. For example, Make Beliefs Comics. Students can go in there, pick out, I think this is the one. There's one where they can pick out their characters and make their own comic strip. And again, you can do that to support the topic you're working on, or if you are working on a functional expressions or grammar, that can be the focus too. You just let the students know what the point is here. Okay, a fourth way of bringing in humor is to use jokes and puns. Right now I'm talking to you from Green Bay, Wisconsin, which is my hometown, and Wisconsin is known as the dairy state. And so I had to put up this pun with a cow and the milk. What do you get from a pampered cow? Spoiled milk. Okay. Lots of jokes. You can find lots of jokes online, but there are two kinds of jokes that I'm including here that are called formulaic jokes. So they follow a pattern. And the first one is a knock-knock joke. And I read that knock-knock jokes were really popular in the United States at the beginning of the 20th century, that everybody was telling knock-knock jokes, and that you could find knock-knock jokes in all newspapers and magazines. And then I read that in Britain, knock-knock jokes were really popular in the 80s. They even had a TV show based on knock-knock jokes. Nowadays, we tend to consider them children's jokes, but because they're formulaic and because they kind of get students have to think a little to figure out that punchline. We might, it's always two people, so we might have them work with a partner, and maybe the teacher could even say some knock-knock jokes before they do them on their own. Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Cows.
Cows who?
Cows don't go who, they go moo. How do they go in Ukraine though? I don't know. How do cows go in Ukraine?
Moo as well.
They go
Yeah.
moo too. Oh, okay. So we can have students sit with a partner or work with a partner and ask them, what is the misunderstanding here? Why is this funny? Well, who sounds like moo, but cows don't say who, they say moo. Okay, knock, knock.
Who's there?
Okay.
Ken,
Please.
Ken, who?
can you please open the door and let me in? Okay, so here we want students to try to explain, well, the misunderstanding here is Ken is a man's first name. Ken sounds like can, C-A-N. So there's the misunderstanding. So we can have them talk a little bit about why is this funny? What's the misunderstanding? Can you correct it even? So if you're writing this, how would you correct it? You could have students go around the room and use these as a warm up, maybe just a very, 5-10 minute warm up. Another kind of joke, formulaic joke, is the good news and bad news joke. And they say that when people give news, they usually give the good news first and the bad news second. I've also read that this kind of joke is often put into talks, especially talks given by church pastors. So the good news is we've raised, $50,000 for the new roof. The bad news is the water heater broke down or something like that. So church pastors often use this kind of thing, at least in the US. So here we have example. The good news is I'm done working early today. The bad news is it's because we were all laid off. The good news is I've just gotten engaged. The bad news is it's to your girlfriend. Okay, so I like these. They could be an icebreaker. We could divide them, the good news, and give out the good news to some students, give the bad news to others, have them go around, see if they can find the other half of the good news, bad news. We could also ask our students to write it. I think if we give them the first part, ask them to write a second part and see how it compares with the one that's, the one that you've found. So these are two kinds of simple jokes that we might use as warm-up activities or icebreakers. We can use jokes to practice grammar. Another way to practice grammar, George Woolard, you see his name on the bottom of the slide. He wrote a whole book. I mean, it's a big book, Grammar with Laughter. The whole book is jokes. So here's an example. What type of car? Okay, we have to tell our students you want to use do, does, don't, or doesn't to complete the joke. What type of car does your dad drive? I don't know the name, but it starts with a P. That's strange. Our car starts with a key. Okay, so again, a whole book of jokes. Again, we ask our students to do the assignment and then we read them together and see if they can find the humor. I believe I have a download of this book. If anybody wants it, send me an email. And finally, in this section, I know that some teachers are teaching content in English. So you can liven up a content lesson with puns. And you can find lots of these online. You can do a Google search, math puns for teachers, science puns for teachers. There's a lot. So here are a few math puns. What's a math teacher? Anyone?
Apple. Tree.
That's the geometry.
Unfair.
Okay. Parallel lines have so much in common. It's a shame. Yes, great. Why doesn't anybody talk to circles? Because there's no point. Okay, not too many laughs with those. Well, anyway, there's a lot of them online. If you're teaching a content lesson and you want to warm up or with a few content jokes, just do a Google search. Okay, and our fifth category are proverbs and quotes. And there's a book I'll show you in a minute written by Petr Medjesh, I believe is the pronunciation of his name. And he's, because I'm thinking proverbs and quotes, these are not necessarily funny, but he has some in his book. And I've read many articles that use proverbs and quotes to bring in humor. So Medjesh says, humor, bringing humor into your lessons doesn't necessarily have to make students laugh hard. It can make them smile, or it can bring recall to them later on and make them smile. So one way to use Proverbs. Here are 5 common, I'll say American proverbs, because I was looking online and I found some British ones that I'm not that familiar with. So, but these are maybe used in Britain as well. But we have 5 proverbs, for example, where there's a will, there's a way. Every cloud has a silver lining.
It's for us, yeah.
Yes, yes. You might have students discuss with the partner, what's the meaning of this? Is there a similar one in your language? And then think about your life. Can you think of a story or an incident that illustrates this proverb? And illustration's an important point, certainly in our writing. In advanced, you want to be able to illustrate points that you make in any piece of writing. So this is a good way to practice providing illustration for something. Okay, you could use quotes to express opinions. So these are actually from that Medyesh book. And if you're teaching literature, these are some good ones. Somerset Maugham said there are 3 rules for writing a novel. Unfortunately, nobody knows what they are. Auden said some books are undeservedly forgotten, none are undeservedly remembered. Okay, so I'm teaching literature in my English class. So we'll take a little time to discuss these quotes. What are they about? Well, of course, they're about books, about writing. And to express opinions, do you agree with this quote? Why or why not? Provide a good rationale or good reasoning for your opinion. So again, you can see I have only 2 points here, and I have many for text sentences. You can see the one that I tend to lean towards. Okay, so to sum up, we can make our lessons more engaging by adding a bit of humor in the form of amusing pictures and signs, anecdotes and texts, cartoons, jokes and puns, and proverbs and quotes. And of course, there are many other things, but these are 5 that I've certainly used. I've got a list of websites that I pulled some of these things off of. So there are websites, funny pictures and signs for all the different types we've just gone through. And again, if you prefer these in a document, send me an email and I'll send you a document with those in. There are 2 that I know of. There are lots of books on humor, and some of them are for elementary teachers, not necessarily English language teachers or ESL teachers, but elementary teachers. But 2 for most of us are this Laughing Matters, Humor in the Language Classroom, has lots of activities. This does have a British humor bent to it. And then TESOL has one book that's fairly new called New Ways in Teaching with Humor, and that is American humor. So we have the British and the American. And finally, are there any questions, comments, discussion? And that includes, do you want to add some way you've used one of these types of humor? Share with us, or questions or comments?
Well, Sally, thank you. Thank you very much. Really very thought-provoking and just very insightful session. Just what I would like, I don't don't know whether this is going to be a commentary question, but just the thing is that I teach business English mostly, and just when we go through our networking module, we just discuss which topics are safe, which are risky, which are tabooed, just for keeping the conversation going. And just, well, we usually classify humor as being a quite risky issue. Because of cultural differences, because of age differences, gender differences, blah, blah, blah. Humor might be a very, very sensitive issue. Just for example, that example with good and bad news, I've just got engaged to your girlfriend. That might be something that might have really happened to someone in my classroom. And that might cause the effect that I can never expect. I'm also very much keen on humor. Sometimes it happens that what I find to be a humor is not funny at all for my students, just because the age difference, this generation gap, you know. Just are there any recipes from you on how to, just one more thing, cultural differences, right? Just if I have a multicultural classroom, then, well, for example, students from Nigeria, which I used to have, well, might not understand something. Just if I have students from Arabic countries, well, they might also not understand something that a woman tells them and pretends that something to be some kind of a humor. Well, just any recipe for a teacher on how to avoid this quite risky and sensitive issues in a classroom?
Well, thank you. Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think we always have to be careful with humor because we don't, just like as you said, we don't want to make fun of any person or culture. Humor should not be hurtful. I think, well, part of it is knowing your students. And if you think that something like that good news, bad news joke might have happened to somebody in your class, well, then definitely avoid it. There are lots of other ones. I think one thing I found is I started making notes in my textbooks when students would say something or tell a story that made their classmates laugh. I would make a note in my textbook about that. And then I would use it, you know, next time I taught the class and those students are gone, then I would use that because I could see that the students had found it humorous. But I guess we have to look very carefully and see if we can see any cultural, religious, gender problem with what we want to use. And also, a lot of times it might not be, I had a textbook that had a chapter on humor, and I had students from many different countries, and the chapter had jokes. And so it said, you know, practice going around the room telling this joke. And they were all like, this is not funny. So I tried to explain to them why it was funny in American culture or in the United States. And then I would ask them, can you tell a joke from your country? Can you translate a joke and tell it? And they often found the same thing happen. We're all like, huh? But then I would ask them to explain why, and maybe there wasn't a lot of humor there, but we had some good discussions about cross-cultural, and that's important too. So, and I'll add, because you said a lot of things that you find humorous, your students don't. I'll add one reason I got interested in this topic is because at my university, the students always did teacher evaluations. And, you know, they wrote nice things in general for my evaluation, but one thing that kept coming up was, she's so serious. She's too serious. So because they said that about me, I thought, oh, I try to work in some bits of humor here and there, and not every lesson, but where I could see a place for it. I don't know that I've answered your question that well, Ludmila, but certainly what you mentioned is a good point, that we can't just pull something off the internet and then run into class with it. We need to think about it, and do I feel it's safe? Do I feel it's appropriate? Yeah.
Thank you, Sally. Well, just all in all, humor is not the only thing we should be careful with when we are teaching English and working with students.
That's right.
It's just one of the issues. And just one more thing here might be, just one more concern here might be that lower level students might not feel comfortable with humor, might not understand it. So it all depends on the language level of students as well, especially just with mixed ability groups, which we very often have. That might appear to be even riskier. But again, that's something we should care about.
Yeah, and I think, again, we can at least with those lower levels think about things like this. Again, the Japanese teacher was teaching level 1 Japanese, and so many students were saying, he's such a funny man, he's such a funny man. We're all, his colleagues were, he is? Well, what was funny were his pictures. He had a huge file of pictures and intentionally tried to find things that were different. And they say, I can remember Japanese so much better because of that funny haha picture. So again, pictures could be offensive too, but yeah, but that would definitely be something you could use with lower levels. So
thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to add that I have a long teaching experience in a secondary school, and I have to say that children like humor very much when there are some elements of humor at the lesson, and it makes the lesson less boring and more enjoyable. So, and I just want to thank you because you have given us so many nice ideas that we can use. So thank you very much. Because usually I have to say that I use something, but just maybe some funny stories to read, to retell, to discuss, but not as many things as you have suggested to us. So thank you.
Well, thank you. And your funny stories, do you get them in a book or
Usually in a book on the internet, so different sources of having them.
Okay. Well, you talk about younger children. I mean, I remember my nephew coming to see me and Aunt Sally, knock, knock. And I'm like, who's there? Orange. Orange who? Aren't you ready yet to go? Anyway, you know, as a little kid, he got a big kick out of those jokes. So I hope you find something you can use. And again, just email me, and you know, if there's something, if you want the Gorilla Man or the social media story. And when you email me, tell me where you are, please. I'm just curious to put a name and a place together. Okay, anything else?
I'd like to thank you a lot for this webinar. It was really helpful and funny. And my question is about the book, that grammar book, which is full of humor. Which level is it for? Could you make?
Well, it has, you mean the one by George Woolard with the jokes?
Is it possible to use it for every level students?
Well, it has, I mean, you saw, if you're talking about that George Woolard book, you saw that the jokes I pulled out were for do, does, doesn't. So
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And I believe, I haven't, to tell you the truth, I haven't looked at it in a while, but I believe it has many, many grammar points. So you could probably, I mean, not that you would use the whole book with every student, but you could pull out, I'm quite sure there are things you can pull out for different levels.
Thank you. And it's good for revision as well.
Yes, well, if you want, you can Google that book. Once upon, you might be able to download it yourself. If not, let me know, because I believe I have a download in my files.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And I believe some jokes are quite neutral. For example, that the gorilla man, I guess it's possible to use it for students from different countries. I don't think that it might be offensive in any way. I believe it's not.
Yeah, I think that one would certainly be okay.
Yeah, and I agree with the previous person who has told about the problems that humor can cause. Of course, that's why we should be careful.
That's right.
But still, thank you very much. It was just a piece of optimism and some light moment, a kind of silver lining. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, let's see. Thank you for your comments. Okay, I don't see questions here, but I thank you for your comments. Thank you. And Maria, did you see any more questions?
No. Just the 3 ones that we talked about. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm glad you remember that summer school. I do too, as it says, that first summer school. You all stole a piece of my heart. Okay, well, I know it's getting late there. Any other questions, comments?
Only great thanks, Sally. Thank you so much. I'm happy that everything went on smoothly. And after the previous time, it's such a relief. You know, I was praying for having this webinar like in a good shape with good internet and so on.
Well,
but
I'm glad I got use this location, because I think the internet here is better than mine at home. So you're welcome. I'm glad. So
and thank you for this optimism, and we really needed it. As Yulia said, it's a great so it's so great at this time here, and it's really silver light. Yeah.
Good. I'm glad you felt that way about it. So again, anybody listening now or to the recording, feel free to email me. Tell me where you are and tell me what you would like, and I'll send it to you. Okay, well, next week will be the last one, at least for now. We can talk and see if you want more later or whatever, but next week, Jean Kirschman will be giving one a week from today, same time. So, and I will be there. So if you're attending next week, I'll see you then. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
And everyone, happy Easter, and have this peaceful time here.
Yes, happy Easter to all. We celebrated last Sunday, but happy Easter to all of you. Happy Easter and goodbye. Aloha.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Sally. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Aloha.
Aloha.